All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends here at Mile High Sports and FanDuel. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. I am here. I am ready. I am excited to talk about Nikola Jokic, Serbia winning over Estonia. I've got another point here. I think Jokic is going to lead the NBA in assists here. I'll tell you why. But then in the second half, I wanted to also talk about, hey, kind of a boring NBA offseason overall. There were some flashes, some interesting things, but more than that, it was kind of a boring offseason. And I do think that that could be good for the NBA going forward if this is more of a relative norm than the exception. And obviously, there's a lot of people that love transactions. We'll get into that side of things, but a revelation that I had today, I was trying to come up with some content and I realized, yeah, there just really hasn't been a lot to talk about this offseason. But we press on as we always do. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as you appear. Okay, let's get into today. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon as Jokic and Team Serbia, the Serbian National Team, they dominated Estonia in their EuroBasket opener for today. And I mean, you could just look at the box score. 98-64 was the final score. As I had mentioned prior to, according to FanDuel, Serbia was about a 31.5 point favorite over Estonia. So right in line with what the bookies were saying at various points, Serbia was up by 40 plus. Estonia kind of caught back up, at least in the fourth quarter, as Serbia is obviously playing their bench guys. They're trying to work back in Vasa Micic. They're trying to work back in Marko Guduric, who was injured. Some other guys, I think that they're trying to work on the detail stuff and use these early games to hone in what they're exactly looking for with the elimination play and not have what happened previously in EuroBasket 4 years ago. But it wasn't going to happen because Jokic and Team Serbia are just too talented in this particular game. It was so clear from the get-go. I think Serbia immediately jumped out to like a 9-0 lead and immediately were leading 20-6, and then it was 28-8, and it was these crooked numbers that immediately became to pass. And it felt like Serbia was just this tidal wave of elite basketball, and watching them dominate a smaller nation in Estonia. Obviously, they don't have the same requisite talent that Serbia does, but it was just cool to watch Jokic. It's cool to watch him in a game that he really cares about. They had a whole bunch of video of him coaching it up on the sidelines, talking to Nikola Jovic, Bogdan Bogdanovic, guys like that, and just watching him play too, where he's not like he was working hard. I don't want to say that, but not entirely like 100% full effort. The difference when you see it, but this is pretty close. This is like a really hard-working regular season game for Jokic, where he knows he had to do at least a whole bunch at the beginning, and just looked fantastic overall. They didn't have to play through him a ton, and so his numbers don't necessarily reflect how dominant he was, other than one. He only played 23 minutes in this particular game, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. Did have 3 turnovers, but not all of those were his fault or anything like that. And I know exactly one where he was passing to a spot and Serbian player just didn't run all the way there and ultimately got a turnover as a result. But he's just a piece of the cog he's just a cog in the machine. That's what I'm trying to say. Piece of the puzzle, cog in the machine. And the Serbians were plus 39 in the minutes that Jokic played. 23 minutes was very, very impressive. He started next to Filip Petrusev, who's been dealing with a sickness. He looked pretty good, dominating around the rim, hit a couple threes. Bogdan Bogdanovic looked fantastic. Did have some turnovers, but overall looked very good. Nikola Jovic looked tremendous again. He had 6 assists, 18 points, just playing off of Jokic and Bogdanovic in a really strong way. And then Alexa Avramovic, their starting point guard, who's just their hustler. He's the guy who's on the ball, chasing everybody around. he's going to be one of those guys that if you are a Serbian fan, then you love him because of how like he is at a talent disadvantage to a lot of these other guys, but he plays so hard and is a really good fill in that starting lineup next to a whole bunch of other talented people. Um, Vasa Micic, as I mentioned, is coming back from an injury. It still doesn't look very good at this point in the tournament, but Serbia, they open it up with a very dominant performance, have a whole bunch of guys that you could point to and say, oh, yeah, that person looked pretty good. How many guys didn't shoot over 50%? Milutinov didn't play, like he didn't shoot that well. Vasa Micic, 2 of 5, and Vanya Marinkovic, 2 of 5. So could be worse. Absolutely could be worse. And it does just feel like Serbia is gearing up for a big run here. Group stage was never going to be where they were challenged, though. I think they've got a game against Latvia later in this group stage, but for the most part, they're gearing up for the round of 16, the quarterfinal, semifinal, and final, if they can get that far. And it does seem like they are well on track to do that. Jokic himself looks great. He made one pass very early in this game where his footwork wasn't fantastic on that. He wasn't really going anywhere, but then whipped a no-look pass across the court in the middle of, he was probably going to do a Sombor shuffle, like just kind of get on one foot and fade away going back over his left shoulder. But then rather than do that, he just turns and whips a pass in the opposite direction. And nobody saw it coming. Avramovic did not make the shot, unfortunately, but huge highlight for him. And just, I think one of those plays that if you're a Jokic lover, if you like to watch him play, that one really sings to you because he sees the floor so much better than anybody else. And nobody is ever truly ready when he is ready. And that's a good sign because Serbia has gotten to his level and they are playing at this amazing pace and they're playing at this high level of basketball that is just very hard to keep up with on both ends of the floor for what it's worth. Serbia's defense was pretty good when they were putting in the requisite effort and closeouts and things like that. But offensively, they are a machine. So as long as their three-point shooting doesn't dry up, I think that they're going to win this tournament, and we'll see what ultimately happens. So very excited to follow that along. For what it's worth, if you haven't, Courtside 1891 is the legal way to watch EuroBasket this year. It's a subscription service, kind of like, well, there's a variety of different ones, but Courtside 1891 is the way to do it. It's $20 for the entire EuroBasket. As somebody who covers the team, that'll be a tax write-off, but for it's only 20. It's not a crazy thing. It's not something you'd want to have to pay for extra. You would prefer that something like ESPN or ESPN Plus or NBC or one of those places would have picked it up, but it is what it is. Hopefully it's something that people can watch, but that's where I checked it out. So if you're interested in checking it out, that is the requirement. Okay. Before we go to break, I have a take. On the last show, I did a breakdown of points per game and how many points I think every Nuggets player is going to ultimately accumulate over the course of it. I had a couple of questions that came through. One of the questions was, oh, so you think that the bench is going to average 46 points per game? Are you serious? No, that's not how it works. Some of those guys will play, and on nights when those guys don't play, other guys will play. The points per game, if you just sum up the points per game that I accumulated, like for example, Bruce Brown, 10.5, Jonas Valanciunas, 9.5, Tim Hardaway, 9.0, Watson, 8.0, Strother, 7.5, Holmes, 5.0, Zeke, 4.0. Like, I think somebody summed that up and was like, okay, so you're really predicting them to have 46 points per game. Well, not all those guys are going to play at the same time. So, but in the points per game, if you don't play, then your points per game doesn't go down. That's the thing. So there will be times where Denver goes with a 9-man rotation, a 10-man rotation, maybe even an 11-man rotation. There'll also be times where they have guys that miss games. And so that's how you get a higher point per game number. than what I expect the bench to actually average. I think the bench will probably average closer to like 32 points per game or somewhere around there. And that's a pretty good number because like sometimes Bruce will be out there and doing his thing. Sometimes Valanciunas will be out there doing his thing. Tim Hardaway, Peyton Watson, who knows? And maybe they'll have a crooked number that they put up. Maybe 32 is kind of underselling it. But that's where I would counter with that. It's not out of nowhere. Maybe these are slightly overestimated, but not by much. But the other number that I wanted to point out was that Jokic, 26.5 points per game. And some people posited, okay, so the reason why you're dropping that number is because of the assists, right? Yes, that is the exact reason. I think that Denver is going to average a whole bunch of assists. One of the reasons why they nearly broke the record for assists last year was because of Russell Westbrook and his ability to be an elite assist guy alongside Jokic at the same time. Now they don't have that. And I don't think that they're going to have that crazy number of assists. Cam Johnson will be a better passer than Michael Porter. Jamal Murray, his assist will go up because he's not sharing the court with Westbrook as often. Aaron Gordon will still be a great passer in the possessions that he has. Bruce Brown will pass. Christian Brown will pass. Valanciunas will surprise a lot of people. But I think the main component here is Jokic, who has never fully averaged 10 assists per game. Like that's never been something that he's ever been able to do. The most he averaged, I believe, was like 9.8 or somewhere around there. Actually, oh no, last year he averaged 10.2. I'm my mistake. I don't know where I got that from. He did average a true triple-double last year, and that's pretty cool to see. He did it in 36.7 minutes per game, though, and so the actual assist rate was not as impressive. It was 44.1, whereas in 22-23, it was 46.6. Now, that number matters to me, and the reason why is because I think his assist rate this year is going to get even higher. Like it was 44 this year. I think this past year, I think it's going to get up into that 46, 47 range. I think this is the year that not only does he play a lot, like he'll probably average about 33, 34 minutes per game, but he's also going to do it by averaging 10.5 to 11 assists per game. It's going to be crazy. And the Nuggets, with the structure that they have on their roster, they're going to play through Jokic a whole bunch of possessions, but the mechanisms that they can get in and out of, there are going to be a lot of times where Jokic just doesn't have to score that often. 26.5 points might even be an overestimation if you think about what happened to that 22-23 season. Jokic didn't have to play in a lot of those fourth quarters. The team offensively was just really good, scoring in a variety of ways. Aaron Gordon was dominating as a scorer. Jamal Murray, obviously, looking pretty good. Michael Porter looking pretty good. But more than that, the bench with Bruce Brown, guys like that, not the bench. Like that's not what I really meant was Bruce Brown is also kind of in line with that. And so Denver didn't have to win as many games. They didn't have to, like the Western Conference wasn't that crazy. So Jokic didn't have to put up as many points. I think it's more or less in kind of that same boat now. He'll put up more points than he did in 22-23. I think that he's at the different level and a different level of expectation than when he was then. But I do think that he's just in line with assists. And I think that Trae Young is really the main guy that you'd have to compete with if you are Jokic for an assist title. And Trae has been assisting like crazy over the course of the past few years. 10.2 back in 22-23, 10.8 a couple years ago, and then 11.6 last year as his scoring went down, but he was really trying to get all of his teammates involved as often as he could. And the offense just runs through Trae Young. They may have a situation in Atlanta where you add Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Zachary Risachet gets a little bit better, Kristaps Porzingis is there. There are some other guys that they can play through at least a little bit more. And with Denver, everything is still geared up for them to play through Jokic and for him to make good decisions. Other guys can pass, and they will because Denver just moves the ball, and a lot of times they'll be passing back to Jokic. But so often, as long as those guys are moving and cutting, whether it's Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown off the bench, Tim Hardaway, Jokic is going to want to pass to those guys, want to get as many of them as involved as possible. And I do think that that will be a focal point of his for this upcoming season. He will set a new record for assists per game. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people the number that it actually reaches, which is cool. Like Jokic continuing to set the bar for himself, continuing to exceed it, I think is a very cool thing. It reminds me of LeBron in a lot of ways, where as LeBron got smarter and saw the court a little bit better, he was able to dictate things in his favor and his team's favor. And Jokic is very much in that category as somebody that can control the pace, control the tempo, and put the ball exactly where it needs to be for the team to be its most successful. So, very exciting to see what happens there. But let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about a boring NBA offseason, but how it might be good for the NBA. We'll be back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, back at it, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Always appreciate the love and support, folks. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Just going down and looking to um, the EuroBasket kind of futures as we currently see them. I'm not seeing anything too crazy on FanDuel, but I am seeing EuroBasket MVP. This one is crazy, actually. According to FanDuel, Jokic is the clubhouse leader for EuroBasket MVP at plus 144. The next highest player is Franz Wagner at plus 800. So there's a massive gap there. Franz Wagner at plus 800, Dennis Schroeder, his teammates, at plus 830. Those are the most likely guys. But then you've got Giannis at plus 900, Luka at plus 1100, Bogdan Bogdanovic at plus 1400. Bogdan looked pretty good, and he has the ball in his hands a lot, so that wouldn't surprise me. But anyway, if you want to get in on the action, that's one way to do it. Okay, let's wrap up with this. Boring NBA offseason. If you're a Nuggets fan, it wasn't that boring. Like, that's what you're thinking. What are you talking about, Ryan? The Nuggets, they made some massive changes to their roster, and they did. I won't say that they didn't. Obviously, you had the Cam Johnson for Michael Porter trade. You had the surprising Jonas Valanciunas for Dario Saric trade. You had losing Russell Westbrook, gaining Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., and it felt like Denver changed around the makeup and the feeling of their team as a result. That's exciting. That's a very exciting feeling for Nuggets fans. And they were one of the only teams, though, where it really felt that way, as much as it was like not just in free agency, but in trades and Denver's overall ability to do that. Other teams did do things like Houston, I think, obviously changed the foundation of who they were, trading Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks for Kevin Durant. They've also added Dorian Finney-Smith in free agency, which was a big deal. But outside of those two moves, I think the biggest move was one that I actually mentioned already. Nickeil Alexander-Walker going to Atlanta. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a sixth man. Like, he's not going to start for them, I don't think. So the fact that that's what we're talking about in terms of changes around the NBA, in terms of transactions, is wild. That is a crazy thing. I mean, think about how much action. I mean, maybe the league is just still shell shocked from the Luka Doncic trade and how insane that was. Maybe they were waiting for Giannis Antetokounmpo to decide that he wanted to leave. Ultimately, he never confirmed it. Nobody ever actually confirmed it, but it seems like he's going to stay. Like, actually, kind of interesting. One of the longest tenured players in the NBA is Giannis Antetokounmpo at 12 years. You have Steph Curry, who's the longest, Draymond Green, second longest. Giannis is up there. Jokic is up there. Surprisingly, Jamal Murray is up there for longest tenured players by one, like just to play for one franchise. And I think that that is where I want to focus on because so often we have gotten, especially with the transaction game is fun. It's very interesting. You want to see how teams kind of change things up. Free agents go different places. They ask to be traded. They look for like to team up with new players. It's interesting. It's fun. Um, but it may not be good. And like at least for the overall health of the league, there are some reasons to think that it can be. And I do think that there is a place for the team up still where you had the Heatles in Miami, you had Cleveland, obviously, Kevin Durant going to Golden State back in the day. Like there's still massive earth shattering moves that can help. But overall, it was the secondary moves. It was the like minor starters. It was the bench players. It was just everybody that were shifting like crazy. And it felt like you had no idea who was on what team. And one of the reasons why rivalry week has kind of fizzled in the NBA is because you got rivalries like, and the NBA is actually doing this again this year, the LaMelo Ball versus Lonzo Ball matchup. Oh, by the way, that's the Charlotte Hornets and Cleveland Cavaliers, who are, yes, stunning rivals, and it's going to be tough. Who knows? Who knows how that one's going to go this year? Maybe some punches will be thrown, but like no, there's just no rivalries. There's no actual bad blood in the NBA, and there's a little bit of a change now where Jokic and the Nuggets feel like they've been a stalwart in the NBA for so long. They have that continuity. Obviously, Porter was a part of that, but it's really Jokic and Murray, and then Denver kind of reloading around them in some different ways. Aaron Gordon's now a stalwart. You're going to have some different pieces and characters there. But now you've got OKC, who's a new power that's developed. And you've had, over the course of like several years prior, the San Antonio Spurs and Golden State Warriors and teams that, yeah, there are some changes and some alterations. But for the most part, like the Warriors were Steph, Clay, Draymond, and the Spurs, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and guys like that. I do think that we are now kind of moving towards, and maybe this isn't actually true because it could just kind of be a down year for the NBA, but not the NBA, but like the Eastern Conference especially. We could just be moving towards a it would be nice to just get rivalries and like actual bad blood back. I did a show on Locked On for like which teams it's okay for Nuggets fans to hate. It's okay for you to actively wish that they do badly. And the reaction that I got to that show was kind of interesting. It was fascinating because I don't think that there are a lot of people that actually care that much about other teams, or they want to act like they don't care. It's beneath Denver to actually care. But that's not how sports should be, I don't think. You should have rivalries. Like in the NFL, it's a little bit different because Broncos fans hate the Raiders, hate the Chargers, hate the Chiefs. And that's going to be true until the day they die. Like they're going to have active disdain for teams like that. Shouldn't it be the same in the NBA? Like, isn't that reasonable to think? Like Denver and OKC shouldn't they hate each other? Isn't that a good thing if they do? Doesn't that provide storylines and intrigue and some actual rivalry and some real bad blood where you get two teams that are going at each other because they care so much about something like that? And the reason why I get into all this is we didn't have that much movement around the NBA. Shams Charania, I remember a report early this offseason before the draft. He said to the effect of, yep, this could be the craziest offseason ever. Ever. I didn't really know what he meant by that, but like, it obviously wasn't. There were zero trades, like zero impactful trades of NBA veterans that were made on draft night. I think Mark Williams going to the Phoenix Suns was the only one, if I recall. There were zero major trades other than the Kevin Durant trade that were made from Phoenix to Houston. And despite the fact that it felt like a lot of teams should have been loading up, should have been trying to change some things, should have been like really going for it, the modern CBA has really kind of affected that in some ways. There are some transactions, but most of the time teams are just re-signing their players. They're just adding their own guys back, or then they make trades during the season and the offseason itself isn't that crazy. I do think that there's a good to that in terms of how the TV partners can now fully identify a team like Denver, a team like OKC, when they get healthy again, a team like Boston, and basically say, yeah, we can really put these teams as pillars of our coverage and expect that they are going to show up and that fans can learn these names, learn these players, learn who they are. Indiana's another team that could be like that. They haven't had that much change. Obviously, the Pascal Siakam trade was one, but like for the most part, it was Tyrese Halliburton and guys that they've picked up over the course of years. You want that. You want fans to really feel like they can be tied to certain teams, certain players, and have some trust in that. It's one of the reasons why there were some jersey controversies where you buy a player's jersey or you finally spend $200 or whatever it is, and then that jersey is no longer usable because that player just got traded or just left in free agency or something. With as much transition as there has been, the NBA has never truly like there it's in a good place, obviously, but in terms of the actual intrigue and the fanfare and the cinema quality aspect of it, it hasn't really resonated as much with me, with some fans over the course of these last couple years, I'll say. And so I'm hoping for it to be different. I'm hoping for that to evolve. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it does seem to me like teams like Denver, teams like OKC, they should be the pillars of coverage in the NBA over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. The Lakers will always be there. Celtics will always be there. Miami, they'll find a way. And there will be some others that pop up, New York especially. But like, it does seem to me that boring could be better in the NBA. It could mean more for the depth of the actual league. And these are things that you care about when you cover it because you don't want it to be superficial. You don't want like I don't want my coverage to always just be about the next move that Denver has to make, the next trade, the next free agency signing, things like that. I would like for it to be about the basketball. I think or not every, but a fair amount of NBA media members need to get back to caring about the basketball as opposed to the transactional aspects, because that will make the sport better. It will make the depth of coverage better. It will make the NBA audience will be thankful for that if the coverage is less about where somebody's going to go and more about what they're actually going to do in this moment right now and how it impacts the league, how it impacts the team, how it impacts the other players, things like that. It does feel like there is somewhat of a void there that's being filled at least a little bit with this offseason. And I think that's a better, more valuable way to cover it. We'll see whether that actually makes sense in the coming weeks, months, even years. But I do think that there's something to it where the NBA can really focus in and hone in on the teams that are together rather than focusing in on the teams that are trying to change things every single season. So, and the players that are trying to change things every single season. It should be rewarded if you stick with a team for a long time, if you become foundational, and emblematic of who that team is. Like Jokic is the Nuggets. Murray is the Nuggets at this point. Those two together have been there for so long. And I can't really imagine covering a team without Jokic at this point, without Murray at this point. And I've talked about the idea of what it would be like without those guys. But it's not really enjoyable. That's not an enjoyable aspect, especially like for somebody that's an all-time great like Jokic. So we'll see what happens, but those are just my thoughts. Couple couple minutes out of your afternoon or evening. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week as Serbia is going to continue to really amp up EuroBasket coverage and EuroBasket play. There will be plenty to discuss going forward. But I'm also going to start getting into more preview content for the upcoming season and what we can really expect from these different guys, from different rotations. There will be a lot of content that you can expect from me. So thank you so much, everybody. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.